everyone. Welcome to Poor Choices Dadcast, episode 6, with the lovely Shad from Shadiversity / Night's Watch. Thank you very much, Shad, for coming on.
My pleasure, X-Ray Girl. It's good to be here.
It is. Now, the reason we made Dadcast was a very random conversation Chris Gore and Gary and I had while on a nooner. But even before that, you had posted a video on Night's Watch to kind of speak to young men about making better life choices, trying to fulfill your life, finding happiness in not just being, better, but in a spouse or kids and whatnot. And, I have always known you've got a lot of kids. I think it's 6 now?
5.
5. Oh my God. Am I mixing up you and Garrett? I think I might be mixing you and Garrett.
I think Garrett has 5 too, though.
5.
I think we're...
Oh yeah, 5 and 5. You got basketball teams. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So since knowing that, you're a very good gentleman, I feel like you're coming from a very good place and you got lots of good advice as a father.
Oh, thanks. It's mainly because I was given lots of good advice growing up, and it comes from both my parents more conservative, also my religion and a lot of the influences around me. And that just has led to me having such a fulfilling life that I'm genuinely so lucky and grateful to have. And it's interesting that some of these decisions aren't hard to make, but you do need to know what they are, like simple things, and that can alter the trajectory of your life in dramatic ways to having a very fulfilling and happy life versus one that can, have a lot of drama and struggle.
I definitely agree with that. But before we really dive into things, for those who are wondering, Tugs sends her regrets. She has had a very sad day today. If you guys want, you should send her lots of love. Her cat Selena has passed away. So if you guys can send her some really lovely messages, I'm sure that will help cheer her up, because we all love our little fur babies. Yes, I call them fur babies until I have kids. They're my babies. So, yes. Touching on what you were talking about, just making choices. But for me, when I was kind of growing up, making the choices and making the mistakes is what led me to make better decisions. How did you kind of figure out for yourself how to make these better choices for yourself?
Mainly seeing the benefits in other people's lives, really. You can see some of the difficulties that happens with relationships that fall out, even when teenagers, early pregnancy as well, and so many things like that. And I was always pretty determined about where I wanted my life to go, and so it was just such an obvious thing to me that I know if I want a successful, happy marriage, I would need to marry someone who had shared values to the things that I want, and also similar life goals, things that we want to achieve together. And so as a no-brainer, that meant it was very important for me to look within my own faith specifically for someone who would share a lot of the values already, but also the religious beliefs and values as well. And therefore, as a result, I didn't look to date anyone. Well, I was one of the few people of my faith in my school. I was not interested. Look, there were some cute girls who were interested in me, going through high school and everything. And I purposely chose that. And some I was friends with, honestly. But I knew if I entertained, these advances and things at a relationship, I could end up becoming quite attracted to them. And I also could foresee where that could potentially lead because we had such different, outlooks on life. And so it seems like a pretty basic thing, but yet it's also very out of the ordinary for teenage guys to kind of I guess, practice is I avoided dating when I was going through high school. There was, I like yeah, this probably also shocks people. So I served. I was a missionary for my church for 2 years. I'm a Latter-day Saint, and when I came back, that was when I was like, now's the next stage of my life, and this next stage is to get married. It wasn't career. It was like, no, now it's time to get married. And of course, then I started dating girls that I met through various church programs. That I'm very like the church, that and faith that I'm part of is very focused on family and also approaching marriage, logically and properly with
Mm.
kind of intent. And so they have a program called Young Single Adults where they have heaps of just dances and activities where young single adults in the church can get together and meet. And
Oh
that
my
was a great,
gosh.
yeah, I like, oh, it was brilliant, right?
Yeah.
And also, yeah, people in my church are very lucky to have that because like it's really hard for young people to find situations where they can just associate and find potential partners going forward, especially wholesome things so of course, so I dated girls in that, right? But because I was approaching it so intentionally, it was pretty it was pretty quick or easy to realize that if this is the type of person who I could spend the rest of my life with or not. And so I only dated some of these girls twice at most before I was like, that was really nice. Thanks for spending time with me. Have a nice life, kind of thing.
Hey, that is super commendable. You hear of these stories of people dating and, a red flag comes up and a lot of people tend to ignore them because
Yes,
uh,
that's such.
it's a very, that relationship is very physical, or they just,
Yes.
have those, like, horse blinders, and I have to really commend you for really dating so intentionally, and maybe it's kind of your upbringing and religion that helped guide you towards this. Because I wish I dated with more intention when I was younger. I mean, I thought I dated with intention, but it wasn't as strict as I thought well, compared to you, it definitely wasn't as strict as it could have been.
Well, I get it does literally come from both my faith and my upbringing. My mum was very like serious about like, yeah, you can date like even when like so we had a age in my household. When you're not allowed to date until you're 16. And when you're 16, you can, ask a girl out on a date and it's just to have a fun activity. It's not to have, a serious relationship or anything. And a simple kind of philosophy was made very clear, both through my faith and my mum in particular, is that the purpose of dating was to find the person you want to marry. And even at a younger age, when you're not ready to get married, the purpose of that is to interact with the opposite sex to
Mhm.
find the qualities in girls that you are attracted to and you feel like that's what I want in a future wife. And so the interesting thing is because I approached dating so, I guess, intentionally, I actually never kissed a girl until I met my wife. My wife is the first girl I
Oh,
ever kissed.
oh my god, she literally got everything from you for
Yep.
first.
Yep. Absolutely.
Oh, that is so special. Oh my goodness.
See, I do feel it's special. Um,
Huh.
and
The
it comes from decisions, like understanding the purpose of dating and also the fact that your choices early on are going to affect your future life in dramatic ways. So make correct choices to do it intentionally and
Yeah.
be aware of red flags and things.
Yeah. And I mean, I watched both of your videos, and something that really popped out to me besides their religious values was um intellectual equal. And you not only said
Yes.
someone who is below but above. So when you were dating your now wife, how do you assess I'm going with your standards. You're, I guess, humor and intellectual equal, because I mean, religious values are pretty easily spoken for,
Mhm.
being that you're from the same church. So, how do you
Yeah.
assess that?
So intellectually, it was basically if we could engage in interesting and deeper discussions on multiple topics. And that's one of the things that really stood out to me when I met my wife is that, well, we met in an advanced Bible study class where we were studying the Old Testament in Hebrew.
Uh-huh.
And so, I mean, that ticked off. I know, right?
I was gonna say, like, nerd. Like, I don't know.
Oh, mega nerd, mega nerd. But that ticked off a number of like requirements I was looking for, because she was the only girl of my age in that class. The only other members of that class
Wow.
were basically couples that were already, and so it meant okay. She clearly is smart because, like, to want to study this, right? And also, she clearly takes our faith very seriously to want to dive in deeper like that. And she was also cute, and so it's like I as soon as I saw her, my interest was just like, like,
Ding, ding,
ding, ding, ding.
ding.
And this is why it's almost like I actually believe love at first sight is possible because that's almost like it was for me because it was those things that really triggered my interest. And before we even got to talk, because after that class, when we started to just hang out, we would talk for hours into the night afterwards, just outside where the class was held, just on any number of topics. And it was just
Oh.
so enjoyable to spend time with her and to talk about stuff. And that's when I was really starting to realize, oh wow, I've never met a girl like this in my life where I can just sit down and talk. And not only that, I I actively wanted to spend time with her out of the sheer joy of spending time with her.
Mhm. And this was
Um,
before you dated, right?
well, yeah, this is before we dated officially. And so okay, so I'll share my first interaction with her because that also basically confirmed the other things on my list because I wanted someone who could laugh, not take themselves too seriously and things. And so I was sitting in front of her and you take notes through the class and I didn't have a pen. And so, all right, opportunity to strike up a conversation. I turned to her
Mhm.
and I asked to borrow her pen. And so that went well. Yeah, that's good. And then after the class, I gave it back and then I asked her name, where she's from, and she tells me where she's from. Now, I like corny humor. I need to brace yourself for this because this is one of the most corny kind of things ever, right?
Mhm.
But it also was like won me over so much. So I asked where she's from, and she says she's from Seymour. There's a place in Australia, north of Melbourne, called Seymour,
Mhm.
and I couldn't resist. I mean, if people have read my books, you know that I love bad puns and corny humor. I put it in one of my characters, and so I couldn't resist, and I said, "Well, yeah, you must see more in there, right?" And I do that purposely to make people grow. Okay, and so I was fully expecting the eye roll, the everything. Instead, my wife, she comes back at me and not only is like, I will take your thing and I will raise you. And she says, yeah, and it's right near Kilmore.
Oh my god.
And
Perfect.
I was like I'm in love.
She understands me.
Yes.
Oh my god.
And that was our basically our first interaction. And even from then, all the things I was looking for in someone that I'd want to spend the rest of my life with, they're all ticked off. Someone who was to joint, so shared values, okay,
Mhm.
shared faith. That was really important to me. Someone who could engage with me on the same intellectual level, and she
Mhm.
was an advanced Old Testament Bible study. Someone who didn't take herself too seriously and could laugh, and that was like proven so fully there. And someone
So
who was also
quick.
cute, yeah, cute,
Mhm.
and I was attracted to. And like, bang, every single thing was like ticked off, and so
I love it. I love it.
yeah,
Now,
we
oh, go ahead.
Oh, so we knew each other for a month from that point, and it's just talking, hanging out, and then we dated officially for 2 weeks, and then I proposed and we were engaged.
Okay, that makes more sense because when I was watching the video, you said that you proposed to her in 2 weeks. I'm like, dang, what conversations did they have? But if you had that 4 weeks of like getting to know each other, friendship, and then
Mhm.
extra 2 weeks of dating intentionally, it makes so much more sense.
Yes.
Um, but hey, if it was still only 2 weeks from the first day you met her and you got all that, I would still believe that you guys would have gotten engaged at that point.
Yeah.
So.
She was not expecting me to pull the trigger so quickly.
Oh, really? How long do you
Oh,
think she thought?
I don't know how long she was expecting. I think she was already perceiving that I was going in that direction, but I knew that I wanted to marry her before we officially dated. We like it was actually at one of these activities, and so the young single adult activities that we attended, and they had this activity. It's called speed dating, where they just and this stuff is so useful for like getting people to learn how to interact with the opposite sex, find the type of person you want. And so what it's called is like you have all like 2 seats in front of each other, and you have like you have a 5-minute conversation with someone before that rotates, and you have a 5 minutes conversation with someone else and rotates like that. And so it was at that activity, and of course, the conversation I had with her was like just orders of magnitude more engaging and enjoyable than anyone else. And then we were just talking afterwards, and it's funny, we were testing each other's perceptions of what we could figure out about each other based on like the mentalist where you try and observe things and you feel like, oh, you're clearly this and that, and so we're
Mhm.
actually sharing like the conversation just naturally went to I don't know, playfully kind of that, and then it's like, all right, so what can you tell about me, what can I tell about you? And as she was speaking about me, I literally had the thought in my mind like, I am going to marry this girl, and that's before we even dated.
I love this. I love this. Now, just a curious question. I know you had your little checklist of those 4 points, the values, the humor, the intellect, and the physical attraction. Did
Mhm.
you actually have this in your head laid out even at that age when you got engaged, or was it kind of something like messy in your head?
No,
Like,
that was the specific list that I figured out
oh,
from dating even then.
wow.
Yeah, and it was like I remember dating a girl who I got along really well with, and she was funny, and I realized, wow, this ability to just joke back and forth is actually I discovered is really important
Mhm.
for me in a relationship. I needed that,
Mhm.
and the thing about this, and she was a lovely person, but I just wasn't attracted enough to her, and you want to be attracted to your partner, and so
Absolutely.
I decided not to pursue that. And then I remember another girl I dated after that, right? She was actually very pretty and she was really smart and she took the faith really seriously, but she was just so dry and serious. And I just like I yeah, I couldn't
And
stand.
I can't ever see you being with someone who's not a joker.
Yeah.
You'd just be so sad.
Yeah. And so when you had like this isn't an exhaustive, unreasonable list, because there's some people that have truly unreasonable lists. They have to be
Mm,
this height and they have to have this hair color and eye color stuff
mhm.
like that, and that's just no too far, right? But you
Yeah.
do need to understand the qualities that you want in a future partner, and
Mhm.
so oh yeah, like that list was as clear to me back then, even when and that's why I was able to recognize so quickly my future wife when I met her, because I knew what I was looking for. And that's why I like, oh, look, I don't recommend everyone, move through a relationship as fast as I do, right? But because I knew so clearly what I was looking for, I was able to recognize it a lot quicker
Dang.
when I came across it. And then when I came across it, I wanted to, I wanted to lock her down.
Shad
That's,
literally put a ring on it.
yep, exactly. I wanted to get a
Mark
ring on that very quickly.
marked his territory. This girl's mine. I was taking her.
Well, funny thing, right? My roommate at the time was also interested in her. Yes,
Oh,
and
no.
he was attending the same advanced Bible study class.
And did you
And
know at the time?
oh yeah, because he knew of her before I did, and he had his eye on her before me. And we never really spoke about it openly. Apart from at one point, I think he mentioned that he was interested in this before I really knew who she was, and I was like, all right, I'll stay out of the way. Then I met her, and I was like, I'm not staying out of the way. But that was as far as we spoke about it. Then there was this kind of unspoken, almost competition between us, because we were in our apartment, and time to go to, it's called Institute, this type of Bible study class. It's time to go to Institute, and we had separate cars, and so we would not openly admit that we were racing each other to get there first to sit next to her. But we're like, time to leave? Yep, time to leave. And we're like watching each other get in the car, and then we're racing off.
Oh my God. How old were you at the time, just to kind of put that into perspective?
21.
21. Okay.
And I am proud to say I won every single time.
Oh, really? Oh, gosh, those fast legs.
But also, I think fate was even on my side. There was one time he beat me to the chapel where the class was. And I got there and I saw him walking in. I'm like, dang it. And we usually go in this main door. And I knew there was no way I'd beat him. But then there is this side door. And this side door is usually always locked. But it's right next to where the class was. And I'm like, well, there's nothing to lose. So I try to go in the side door, and that one time it was open. And so my roommate, knowing he beat me, was walking in through the main door. And when he gets to the class, I'm there sitting next to him, like I teleported.
He must have been so pissed.
Yes.
Oh my God. This makes me think of like high school version of dating, when you're like, if I sit next to her, she'll fall in love with me. And I mean, it really did happen to you. So
well, it was an opportunity to interact, to talk, and
I love it. I love it. I do have one Streamlabs donation. We got JHS for $69. Says, okay, Shad, if it's called reverse cowboy in America, what do you call it in the land down under?
what does that mean? I'm a wholesome. There are some things that I'm not aware of.
It's a
position, I'm guessing.
Position.
Yeah.
Where the guy lays down and the girl sits on top, but I guess facing the other way from the guy.
I don't put names to those things.
Is that it? Did I get that right, chat? I don't know. Yeah, the episode, I don't even know what it would be called there. Does it go in the opposite direction? Yes. Well, JHS, you stumped him. He doesn't know. Thank you very much.
Hey.
Honey, is that never talking about it again? No, yeah, that's true. And I do have one super chat from the last time we were going to have you, and then you got sick. So Piston for €5 says, Shad, what do you say to Dalen to convince him not to kill you if he finds out you killed his family?
Oh, so Dalen's a character in my book, and I tortured him a lot, and someone asked what would happen if I ever met him in real life, and I said he'd probably kill me for all the crap that I've put him through. And I'm not sure what I could say. Honestly, he would have a bit of an existential crisis, because basically I'm God of this universe, and his answer would be why? Why did you put me through all of that? And my answer back would actually be, well, a lot of it was from your own making and your own choices. There were things that I intentionally, put in your way, because you can still be an instrument for good, and you're proving that. And yet there's a long road for redemption ahead of you. But, and that, well, it kind of ends there, because the question of my novel hangs in the air of if this character could actually be redeemed from all the crazy evil he committed. Like, he committed genocides, right? And it posed the question, like, if someone like that had a true change of heart and then was given power to fix some of the bad that they committed, but also to be a huge instrument for good, could they actually get redemption? And that's kind of a question that I don't want to answer for myself ever, because I want the readers to ask that of themselves and come to that conclusion themselves.
I want to think that there is always room for redemption. Sometimes it just takes the right moment to realize things, or a culmination of moments. And I mean, I've had a lot of bad choices that I've made, and I own up to it and take accountability. And it ended up bringing me to where I am now with Mark and here, and being really happy. So, hopefully Dalen can be okay with his choices.
Well, I don't think he'd ever be, because he genocide. So
I mean, yeah, I have not really
yes,
killed anyone, not even like an animal. You'd have to do it for a good reason, the killing, I guess, but I haven't gotten to that point. I haven't gotten past the chapter 1 of your book because I keep falling asleep and not knowing where I am. But the reader is really soothing, okay? He's very good.
Oh yeah, I mean, Michael Kramer has just got one of those voices that are amazing.
Yeah. So I'll eventually listen to the whole book. It's going to take maybe a year to get through. But yeah. Well, I've killed a fly because it was annoying, I guess. But I like, even animals, that we eat animals and kill them for a reason. So I think that's part
Yes.
of Earth and life. And but flippantly killing people, that I've never been there, so I don't want to judge.
So one of the things I wanted to do intentionally with the book was to not give the main character any out or excuse for some of his actions, because there are some fantasy properties where, and I don't want to give any spoilers, but it's a good example in the Stormlight Archives. And look, I love this book. And there's a main character who's a very heroic character that you discover did some really bad things in the past. Yet even the bad things he did, there's kind of like a reason that makes you easier for the reader to accept this character, because there is this thing called, I forget what it's called actually, but it's a bloodlust that comes from like a supernatural entity that causes people to be vastly more violent. And he was under the control of, I think it's called the Thrill. They reference it, the Thrill of battle, and overcomes it. Actually is a supernatural force in the book. And so he wasn't in his right state of mind, where this character did really, horrible things. And so, yeah, it's easier to kind of accept this character's redemption arc, because there is a bit of an explanation and an out for his bad actions. I purposely didn't want to do that with Dalen. I wanted to actually, basically, he had no excuse for many of the things he did. Like, he was under intense kind of mental, he never properly recovered from the death of his family, and so he was never mentally fit to be put into a position of rulership. But that's still not an excuse. But that is actually a reason that led him towards some really bad decisions, because he was actually not mentally fit for things. And
That leadership.
yeah. And then he ended up making some really, really bad things, even though he could still think logically. And that's why he doesn't have an excuse, because it was like the cold, hard, merciless logic that led him to some horrible, horrible actions. And I wrote it so it was also incrementally, bit by bit, where it was just one concession after another, where it gets worse and worse and worse. And so it does make the character more challenging to accept this redemption arc. And I did that intentionally because I wanted to challenge the reader and push it to that level.
I love that. I love that. Exploring something that I personally have never gone through, and it's kind of interesting to observe. So when I get to those parts, I'll let you know my thoughts.
Oh, I can't wait.
All right. So back to what we were talking about with dating and your videos. I like one of the things that you touched on, I think in the second video, where femininity and masculinity is not physical strength for masculinity. It's about mental strength, the power of choice, helping people struggle helping people when they're struggling with your personal strength and whatever it is. I've always like compared it to, you know, uh I'm better at organizing than my husband, so obviously I'm going to be doing stuff like that, et
Yes.
cetera, et cetera. And I- it seems so simple,
Hmm.
but I feel like people don't understand that, especially comparing to Hollywood and what we've seen today in movies and shows. Is this something that you kind of knew, or it was demonstrated when you were a kid, when you were growing up? Is that how you equated femininity and masculinity?
A bit. So definitely by example, by the things that I saw growing up, but also more predominantly in terms of the specific kind of definition is my church and the leaders of my church. There was the one of the catalyst things that helped me really conceptualize the core and truth of what is true masculinity and what is true femininity. It's actually a talk by one of the apostles of my church, and he entitled it "Let Us Be Men." And he gave this example that just hit me to the core, and I even get a bit emotional relaying it, because he talks about an example given by his father. And what it was is that his mother had an injury on her arm, that her arm couldn't move in certain ways, and moving in certain ways made it really, really painful. Yet she still sacrificed to do the homemaking duties so his father could go out and work. And one of the things he did was to iron everyone's shirts. And there was multiple sons in the family as well as the father. And back then, holding the iron to iron the shirts caused her a lot of pain. And so one day, the father takes their family out to a appliance store, and there was an appliance there which is like an ironing press. I'm not sure if you've seen though, where it has like this large panel. When you press it down, and it'll iron a shirt by pressing this panel on top of it,
Mhm.
taking out the needs to hold an iron, and this would save the mother of tremendous pain.
Mm.
And so the father, when they're looking at it, the mother is thinking, we don't have the money to afford this. And then the father takes out cash and says, we'll buy it straight away. And on the way home, um, the mum starts saying, how can we afford this? Where do we get the money? We can't do this. And the dad turns to his mother and says, we can afford it because I've been skipping lunches for a year and saving up the money to be able to buy it.
My God.
And the son who is sharing the story, when he saw his father say that, he said to himself, there is a man. And
Oh,
that hit home, because
dang.
that 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 is so true, because that is the core of it. That is the nobility in true masculinity, in sacrificing because you can bear a burden easier than someone else. And that's what really taught me in a conceptual sense, a way that I could describe it, of what is true masculinity.
My God. That was a beautiful story. You got me
Yeah.
crying. Oh my God. Oh, yeah. I I don't know if I have a concise story like that, but dang. Chat's like, they're loving this. I think if anyone ever needed a story about self-sacrifice, that really hit home. I
It
mean,
really
we
does.
what would you say? Sorry?
It really does, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we hear it all the time, but I think that, it's like the little things, that we do naturally as like a mother, a father, a brother, or sister. But when it comes time to something so simple as ironing that hurts someone, and you see it every day, the pain that she goes through. So he took a whole year. That's a lot of skip lunches in order to
Mhm.
do something so nice for, your wife, and you want her to feel better.
Exactly, and that's yeah. So if I was to try and define what the core of both masculinity and femininity is, it's taking on the burdens that you can bear easier than others because of your inherent traits as either a man or a woman. And so that is lifting for men, it is lifting the heavier burden because of strength. But for women, oftentimes it's managing a home. And because they can do it so much better than guys. Like it's interesting. Men have a instinct to go out and tame the world, to
Mhm.
bend the outside world into an environment that is safe for them and their family. And women have it's almost an equivalent instinctive need to tame their current environment and mold their home and where they're living into something that is better, more beneficial, and
Mhm.
more livable for their family. And I just find that, like, it's such a perfect yin and yang about the instincts we have. And then when we actually realize that, okay, we can achieve these goals by embracing them because the world can be really tough out there,
It
and
is.
men can bend the environment to their will because of inherent natural virtues that they have, and women can order their environment so much. Like, guys are happy to live in just a pigsty and a couch and a TV, and like I was like that when I was single too. And
Mhm.
the way my wife turns our house into a home by so many intentional things that just go over my head, right?
Absolutely.
And it's by realizing that, okay, we can actually help each other out in more significant ways when we realize I can save someone else from a greater burden because I have natural capacity and ability to do
Mhm.
that, is when men and women really, really flourish together.
Yeah, yeah, and it's something as simple as, like, for Mark, when I do the clothes, my dad has taught me this new way of folding shirts where you see each of the shirts with the graphic T so that he knows which T he's picking up when he's going through his shelf, and something like that. He's like, "This makes life so much easier."
Yes, and it's things like that just completely goes above our guys' heads more often than not.
Mhm.
And so many things, like just the other day, my wife was like realizing our children are having trouble finding their clothes. And so she took all their clothes out of their thing and reordered them. And it's like, I would never bother to get around to doing something like that.
Lady Shad, oh my god.
But it goes to show you like the differences. And yet there are things outside that need to be fixed that I see, that I know.
Mhm.
And it's like my wife doesn't. So, so funny. She's so bad at hardware and repair and things like that. She just never gets around to it because she doesn't feel comfortable even approaching it.
Oh,
And
no.
so, like, even changing light bulbs, right? I'm the one who will
Oh,
do
no.
it.
To be fair, she's so cute and tiny.
Yes, she is.
So she can't reach the light. I mean, there's ladders, yes, but
Yes.
if all you need to do is reach up, I don't know how high your ceilings are. If you could reach up and reach the light bulb, that make it just significantly easier. Plus, ladders are dangerous.
They are. Well, that's the other thing. I love my wife so much, and she is so uncoordinated, and it does require ladders. And so I'm kind of like, honey, no, no, no. I've
I
seen you on
gotcha.
ladders before. I'm gonna handle this, okay? But that's a perfect example because yes, she could do it herself, right?
Mhm.
But I have
Strong,
greater
independent.
capacity to do it safer and quicker. Okay. And so am I risking my own safety? A little bit, but not as much as her. And
Mhm.
so as a result, of course, this is a job that I would have. Guys should, I feel, realize the nobility in taking up burdens and tasks like that, because you can save someone of an even greater burden. And
Mhm.
And again, that is the core, I believe, of what masculinity is.
Yeah. And we need more of that understanding. I feel like because the way the world has transpired, delayed marriage, delayed interaction, and intentional dating, people are women are needing to be more masculine in order to live out in the world. And with we're more educated, but in some ways we've regressed in so many ways.
Yeah.
So when you have the space to actually be more feminine, we're almost scared of doing it.
I know, and I feel that's such a shame because, like, the thing is, great mental stability comes from accepting who you are and liking who you are. And as we're seeing in the world, not only is it very hard to try and change your gender on a biological level, it's actually impossible to change your gender. And so coming to terms with the natural inherent qualities of who you are, how you're born, is actually, I feel, quite important for good mental health going forward. And so I feel it's really important for women to like being women and men to like being men, and finding those natural and or even stereotypical masculine and feminine behaviors that resonate with you, because not all of them will. But I think I'll look. The reality is, most stereotypical masculine or feminine behaviors actually do resonate for most men and women. Okay,
Hmm.
um, and so I don't think we should sacrifice the well-being of the majority for fear of offending a minority that can't identify as well with these things. But they will find actions that validate themselves as either a man or a woman, and when you do that, you feel better about yourself and more content with who you are.
Hmm.
And I think that's really healthy and good. And so I love it when I feel more like a man. And the things that help me do that are the classic masculine actions, these actions of changing the light bulb to lifting the heavier box, these simple actions of which are a type of sacrifice and burden that I'm choosing to take on because I can bear that as a man. And that makes me more secure in my manhood, validates it, makes me better about who I am, and it just leads to vastly better mental health.
Hmm.
And I see like women finding that as well, when they can just celebrate being a woman and being feminine and things. And I feel that there's such destructive kind of results from the world which tries to shame men embracing manhood, but I think even more so women embracing classic femininity. Um, and you see so many, women in the world struggling with mental health and unhappiness. And you see these, career women who they don't need no family, and at the end of their life being so sad, lonely, and depressed.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because I think that those type of the high power careered women, they almost delude themselves into thinking that they're happy with what they did, having the high power career, not having a husband, or if you did have a husband, what kind of man did she end up marrying? And it kind of sucks because you think, oh, I have time later, and time is precious.
Oh yes.
You Men don't have as big of a or as small of a clock that women do.
Mm.
Getting a healthy child, it's almost scary because I've had conversations with like women in their 30s and 40s where they're scared to have kids because what if the kids
Yeah.
have defects, or how long it takes for a pregnancy to stick, if I have to do IVF, if I have to end up adopting, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots of things that can go on the older you
Yeah.
get. But
Yeah, and we actually kind of faced some of those in our last pregnancy, our last child that was born, because there things change the older you get, and as a result, there were a couple of complications for our last child to be born, and they, the doctors are saying, like, if you are thinking about having more children, you need to be aware there are going to be dangers like this going into the future because
mhm,
you know people do age, and so we're really lucky that we had our kids earlier on, um, because Oh man, I'm so grateful for modern medicine because
Oh
we
yeah.
did have one, like we might have actually lost one of our children if it wasn't for modern medicine
Oh my goodness.
during the birth. Um, and trying to have all our children later on in life for my wife mostly would have been impossible. We might have even lost some of our children as a
Oh
result.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank God for modern medicine. I
Oh
know
my.
that like mm, the what's it called? The evolutionary pressure of even just the birthing hip sizes have changed
Yes.
because of C-sections, which is it's kind of interesting. Anyways, I just science will put that on the
Mm.
side.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, so these um, these feminine and masculine traits, um, you kind of touched on how weak men resort to physical violence to dominate people and emotionally manipulate people. Did you uh is this something you deduced more recently in the past, or how did you come to this conclusion? Cuz this is something that I have never actually thought about personally, but when you said that statement, it just like hit like a ding 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 in my head.
It's a truism I observed through growing up, but also experienced as well. Like when you're younger, you're inexperienced. And so as a result, you have a more kind of fragile self esteem. And I can look back and observe the actions I undertook to try and strengthen my self esteem. And they were all reflections of actually how weak that self esteem was. Because if you truly have an understanding of your own internal value, you don't need validation from others. And so you see a lot of like these guys who posture and try and show off their strength and everything like that, and it's all an attempt to get external validation. When if you're truly content with your own strength, and if you know you're strong, you don't need to prove it to anyone, okay? Because you know it. But as soon as you need to prove it to others by, again, addressing any slight to my respect or honor and having to impose my strength on other people and everything, it's all a reflection of weakness and a fragile
Mhm.
self-esteem and a fragile ego.
I just had something click in my mind while you explained that. Uh, when I was younger, I thought being a show off was being cool. And let's just say I got served for my weak mindedness. And that I'll put it as that it was a weak minded moment or couple of moments. And to just know what you have and be happy with that and not having to show it in people's faces. It's the exact same thing, but on, we'll say, my perspective or a female perspective. You can do it with a man too, with
Mhm.
like very expensive clothes. You know, those people who wear Louis Vuitton all the time to show as if they're rich, but then you got the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world wearing a plain T-shirt and jeans.
Yes, yes.
Oh my God. This is, it's actually insane how much sense you make and how you figured this out so early in your life.
Well, some of it not so early. I had to learn through realizing my own kind of fragile self-esteem as a young man, and coming to a deeper kind of understanding of my own internal strength and respecting myself and not needing that validation from others. And that strengthens you against so many types of criticisms and attacks and everything, because suddenly you don't need that validation. And so it doesn't matter if people criticize you or think negatively of you,
Mhm,
because you know your own value, and their opinions don't matter. But for people who need validation from others, criticism can cut really deeply
mhm,
to them. Um, and yeah, it's funny how broad kind of this understanding actually reaches, just how you were mentioning about even with fashion needing validation and acknowledgement and attention because of wealth, other than the core, characteristics positive characteristics you have as a person.
mhm. insane how you can compare all that with. I'm sure other people might have a moment here as well, just like I did. It felt like a glass breaking moment. Honestly.
It's a pleasure to be part of it.
And I mean, we've seen you've been part of controversy, and I'd say you keep your head lifted very high. You have what's important around you in front of you, and you don't let other people sway you just because people want to break you down or break your
Yep.
character or your opinions. Just like in the chat, we just had a lovely I don't even know what to call it, a bot.
Really? I missed it.
Yeah. It's all part of YouTube, I suppose. So
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. And as a result, there can be mountains of, opposition, criticism, and stuff, and you're able to resist it a lot easier because if
Mhm.
you understand your own internal worth and you put your because look, everyone does find the opinions of others important to a certain extent, but it's who those opinions come from most important, like my wife and children. Okay.
Mhm.
And for me, most of all, it's actually God, the person who I am most, intent on pleasing before anyone else is my heavenly Father. And as so long as I am right with him, doesn't matter what the world thinks of me. That can actually be a very strengthening and validating thing through life.
Very interesting. I love how your religion has had uh, a very large, or probably the largest impact in your growth and through life, and even up till
Absolutely.
now. So
Yeah,
yeah.
massively so. I mean, I'm so grateful for my faith, and it's one of the confirming witnesses to me of its truth, amongst other things as well. But, by their fruits ye shall know them. That's a passage that the Savior shares from the Bible. Like, you can test the truthfulness of something by the fruits that it brings, and the fruits is a symbolic representation of the results. Okay,
Mhm.
the you metaphorically toil in the soil of your life and put things to the test, and then you can see the truthfulness of it by the results it brings. And
Mm.
if this is true and the promises that are contained within them are true, then you would get the promised results. And
Mhm.
I've been able to put that to test in my life, and it has proven true and accurate more than I can express.
I love it. I love it. Aw, John, I've never met a Mormon I didn't like, and I've met a few. That's not corny at all. That not corny at all. I'm like, I wonder how many Mormons I've met in my life, just because I've never had a conversation to be like, okay, you're a Mormon. You probably meet so many people, and I tend to try to find the good more than the bad in most people. So, and Shad, you're definitely one of the good ones out there.
Ah,
So
thank you. I
you're
appreciate that.
welcome. You're welcome. All right. So let's get into kind of I guess today's world dating and your thoughts on it, and seeing how like
Before you do,
oh,
I absolutely want to, but you mentioned something before that I think is a good, springboard
ooh,
for another
what?
quick about the idea of, women getting high-end careers and finding, them
Oh
to be
yeah, sure.
unsatisfying. 'Cause I feel modern day feminism has done women a massive disservice by denigrating homemaking and motherhood. Um
Hmm.
because in terms of the behaviors, actions that women can undertake that validate their own womanhood and femininity, right? And then make them feel more content with who they are and more centered and get kind of purpose and validation in life. There is no greater, career than homemaking and motherhood because they get
Hmm.
to embrace that instinct that they have to order their direct environment to a way that makes them happy and validates them and pleases them. And I feel that women have a huge advantage over men in the fact that they have a potential life path that is easier to recognize, that gives such fulfillment and validation for them when they pursue it. And guys can sometimes find a lot of difficulty finding like a path in life that gives fulfillment and validation. But what's interesting about it, right?
Mhm.
Guys can actually gain fulfillment, but not only necessarily fulfillment. Sometimes they can actually find their jobs annoying and bothersome, but a willingness to do it and bear it and gain satisfaction from even doing tough jobs if they're supporting someone else. Because our
Mhm.
instinct is to do that, to protect and provide. And when men successfully provide, and I can attest to this firsthand, like the fact that I can look at my home and think, I was able to provide this for my wife and children, and that I'm able to provide for them a stable, secure, comfortable life gives me such fulfillment and joy. And it gives me validation in who I am. And so and that's even when I was doing jobs that I did not like. And so men are willing to go into the coal mines and do really tough jobs if it's achieving something that validates them. And that's how we can find that. And we literally like, it's funny how some of these impulses and satisfactions comes from almost like a hormonal base biological level, where men, I provide, protect, I feel good. Women nurture and home make, they feel good. And it even gets to such a basic level as that. And so I really kind of detest the denigration of motherhood in the modern day, that they try and say it's a type
Yeah.
of enslavement and taking away. I'm like, holy crap, like, do you know how many jobs suck? You're trying to tell women that they will get less fulfillment out of spending a life raising their children whom they love and adore, and
Mhm.
and avoiding that to go at a crappy office job. And I mean, like, what are they thinking to try and sell women that?
Well, it's I feel like it's such a multifaceted problem. So we can go back to when feminism first started. It was sexual liberation, and that isn't a good way to set the standards on the type of woman you want to be when you're like a wife, right? We see women nowadays have like 3 digits partners. Like, that's
Oh
insane
my
to
gosh.
me.
Yes. Yeah.
But, that yeah, you do what you want. I've always lived in this like, okay, I'm happy being me, you do you, I do me, and as long as you don't hurt other people, that's fine. Um,
See, this is true. Like, yeah, like people are entitled to live lifestyles that they want, so long as they don't break the law or take away the freedoms of other people, not their feelings. Like, if your lifestyle offends other people, but as long as you don't impact them,
mhm,
that's separate, right? Um, but they cannot demand other people accept their choices equally. And so
yes,
these women with really high, body counts, right? Men are entitled to be turned off by that.
because
And if they
it's the same thing back. Women
Yes,
are turned off by
exactly,
so many things men do.
exactly. And by the way, I think men should also be shamed for having huge body counts. I hold the same criticism on both genders. It's just more stereotypical. Men is usually will have an issue with that. And guess what? They're entitled to that. You can't say, you must accept my life choices. Like, no, you can't force me to do that.
No,
So you can live the way you want to live, but you bear the consequences for it. And if you
yeah.
want to make the choices that's going to give greater assurance of future happiness, right? Well, that's probably something you might want to avoid in terms of
Mhm,
high body
mhm.
counts.
Yeah. So I guess feminism, the beginning with the sexual liberation, and then with more higher education, you're delaying even from like 18 to 22 years old. And then you have higher education past that if you go into your master's or your doctorates or specializations. So if that delays getting married, you're getting older too. With now having higher priced homes where having an average job, you can't pay for it. So now you have to fend for yourself. And then when you get married, you both need to work in order to pay for a home. It makes things more difficult. And people don't want to make sacrifices. And that word I say very specifically because so many people are so selfish. If you want to have a family, you're going to have to maybe make some sacrifices. Maybe not
Yes.
have the nicest house or the apartment, live somewhere else, drive. not drive into work and take the subway. I don't know. There's lots of
No,
things that you can do.
you hit on such an important element about, yes, you need to make choices that will like put your life in a way where you can manage things, because having a family is so beneficial and it's so important that we people should really be approaching their future life with that in mind first. And yeah, like the first home that my wife and I lived in, it was a it was a rundown old place, right? um we entered into our relationship without much, and then but we built a life, and a successful life, together. And so sometimes that does require looking like towards places that are more affordable to live. And one of the reasons we chose to live in this more rundown place is that I purchased it. I bought it early on and as an investment, and I purposely bought one that was a fixer upper. So wasn't the nicest place, and we never got around to fixing it up while we lived in it either.
Oh, no.
By the way, but when we were married, we needed to choose where we'd live. And we currently, when we were getting engaged and going through that, we were both living closer to the city. It was a lot more expensive to do that. And so it was a no-brainer. We have a house. The mortgage is cheaper than rent, even in the location where I bought it, let alone rent near the city. My gosh. And so we moved into there. And yes, my wife, she worked when, before we had our children, but when she fell pregnant, she stopped working, and I was the sole provider from there on. And then what happens as well after that is, because it's such a joint effort to have a family, my wife has been helping out with the YouTube and the business, and she's a crucial part of it now. And she handles because she can, again, taming kind of like the local environment and everything are just natural things that she can do so much better than me, like budgeting and managing the flow of cash. And I hate dealing with that. Like, let me focus on the creative, going out in the world and interacting and making content and all that stuff, and the internal processes of budgets and monies and payrolls and all that stuff.
Yeah, take care of that.
And I'm so grateful that she does that.
Yeah.
And so even when like people think of homemaking and raising children, if a husband and wife are working together, of course the husband helps with the homemaking, and the wife also helps in kind of business and career side as well.
Well, and it's so true because we see it, and I'll relate it to my job with Gary. I do organizational aspects in terms of my producing. Like, I'm not a producer where I, artistically produce, and sound, nothing like that. But without the organization, it wouldn't work as well. And that's the same thing with like my mom. She had the schedules down packed with the
Yep.
kids, knew what hobbies they're going to, what time school's done, all that, made sure everything worked. Because without that, the house would fall apart.
Yes. Like, my wife has a weekly schedule and she needs to sit me down. It's like, this is what I'm doing in the week. And I'm like, okay, yep. And I try and remember it, and I usually forget most of it.
Yeah. Mark and I actually, we have decided to do like a night check-in for the next day to hopefully have us both remember, because we used to do the week of, but it wasn't working by Wednesday. So that has been working out really well for us, and it's kind of funny how this is this feminine masculine energy is portrayed in not just your relationships but even in work.
Yep. I mean, because look, of course guys can organize and stuff like that, but I think there's a reason why a lot of secretary kind of positions end up being taken up by women. Like, it's the whole understood kind of quality that women are better at multitasking and men focusing on individual things, and you see that play out in many kind of career paths.
Nurses, same thing, mostly
Yep.
women. A
Mhm.
lot of those healthcare workers are women, except doctors, but they don't have to be as nurturing, I suppose. But when they
Yeah.
are, it's kind of nice, to be fair.
Yeah, it is, but you can kind of see the qualities, like, a doctor focusing in on the specific issue and the problem, but then in terms of healthcare and nursing, there are multiple things
Mhm.
to pay attention to and help out with. And also the fact that women have a better natural instinct for empathy and
Mhm.
nurture and things.
Absolutely.
And it even goes down to some base like biological things, because women have a softer voice and are usually shorter and more slight than men, less intimidating, therefore they're more approachable. And women can, like, people can trust women usually easier than, men, especially large, imposing, deep voice, intimidating kind of men that, like, they don't mean to be intimidating, but they just, but it's so interesting how even such fundamental results of our biology impact the way that we interact. But
Mhm.
if we can understand that and embrace it, we actually can, the relationship will run smoother and society even runs better. Like, even like, there's a reason why men take on stereotypically the disciplinary role in their household and women usually take on the nurturing role. They go, men, of course, nurture, and women also do discipline, but there's clear evidence in practice as to which gender
Yeah.
usually achieves it better. And there's been multiple times where my wife, she's trying to get the kids to do something. It's like, kids, do this, do this. And they're just not responding. Even if she tries to raise her voice, it's like, she looks at me, Shad, and I just look at them, oi! And kids, bang! Instant response. Instant.
Yep.
Even from a young age. Like,
Yep. They know.
they know. And it's because men, just by nature of having a deeper voice, right?
More
People
commanding.
respond to the nature of, you know, command, and also there's intimidation involved as well. Like, you need to do as you're told. If you don't, there's going to be trouble. Like a father saying that, right? Is there's a sense of understanding like that's
Oh,
going
yeah.
to stay true when a dad does that. Um, and wow, children need boundaries and discipline.
Oh,
So
they
important.
do.
Oh,
They
it's so
do.
important.
We had a conversation. I believe I was with Chris. He said one thing that if I had to impart anything, if you say you're going to do something in terms of like punishment or good,
Yes.
positive validation, you have to do it. Otherwise, they will walk all over you.
Yes. Children are amazingly perceptive without realizing how perceptive they are, right? They instinctively mold their behavior based on what they unconsciously detect they can get away with.
Mhm.
And this is, like, you see it in classrooms all the time. And as a parent, if you ever say something to your children and you don't follow through with them and they misbehave anyway, you are only teaching them that they don't need to obey you.
Yeah, they can get away
And
with it.
and so what I have done with every single one of my children, as soon as, even when they're like, they're crawling, right? They're on their hands and knees.
Mhm.
It's easy to tell when they're reaching a point where they can understand certain things from you. Like, they can understand tone of voice, even yes and no. And as soon as I saw my kids reach that point, I would detect something that they would try and reach for that, we didn't want them. And all my kids always, it was always the baby wipes. They loved getting the baby wipes and just pulling them out and making a mess. And so what I would do when I saw that they were queuing onto these things, I would sit down, put the baby wipes in front of them, put them like a meter away, and of course they would instinctively reach to it. And as soon as they do that, I'd go, no, stop them, prevent them from grabbing it, pull them away. They'd do it again, no, and I would and
Oh.
I and I would do that for as long as it took, even if it took an hour, until they realized what no meant, and no matter how much they try, they're not going to be able to prevent the reality. When mummy this is teaching, when daddy says something, you can't change it. This is the result. And it has worked phenomenally for each of my kids. And so, so I teach them this even from a really young age. And we've
Uh-huh.
gone out and hung out with other families, and they're still crawling around, and they go and reach for something, and I look at people like, and I say their name, no. They look at me and they pull back, and the other parents look at me like I performed a magic trick. They're like,
Oh my
what the hell did
gosh.
you just do there? That
Good it's I don't want to compare kids to dogs, but in some ways, training and disciplining in that aspect is very similar. Is it like Pavlov's response? If you keep conditioning them, saying no, no, no to the wipes, they will learn eventually and extrapolate that into different situations.
Mhm.
And I mean, now I'm going to be using that.
Oh, yeah.
If you guys
Like,
need a good advice,
it is so important because children, they're still developing. They don't understand greater context of danger and reason and stuff. And you can try and describe, like, explain to a toddler, you shouldn't do this because you could injure yourself. Don't put things into the power sockets or any number of things, right? And they won't understand it. And so you
Mhm.
have to teach them to understand that their parents know best and they need to follow what they're told for their own well-being. And so it's really
Mhm.
important. And so once they understand the simplest thing of yes and no, well, then they understand that they can then learn the why later on, but also it protects them as well. And just in also just behaving better and things.
Yeah, well, I feel like kids need rules to be happy. They don't know it. They like to push the bounds, and especially before the teen years, they are happier when they are, within these rules and they know how the world works, and then they can use those rules later when they're an adult. And we've seen what happens when kids don't have rules. We see it a
Oh,
lot
yeah. Gosh, gosh,
today.
gosh. They become entitled, easily offended,
Selfish.
spoiled, selfish brats. Like, they were never told no, and so they think that when someone tells them no in the real world, "What do you mean? How dare you not validate whatever I say?" And then, yeah, it breeds some really socially just disconnected adults as a
Mhm.
result for just not understanding things as simple as yes and no.
Yeah. And I mean, every parent is different, but I think as a society, we need to not discipline, but what's the word? Create more structure
Yeah,
for
but to do
kids.
that, it requires discipline by
That's true.
defining boundaries and everything. People often assume they think discipline and they associate with you can
Physical
discipline your
discipline.
kids. Yeah, you can discipline your kids just easily with timeout and multiple different types of
Mhm.
things.
And it's just it reflects real life, when you see someone do something illegal, they go to jail. That's their time out as an adult, you know. We
Hmm.
have to show that there's consequences to actions, and since there's not as many consequences of actions for people or persons of color or gender or whatever it is,
Hmm.
there's the certain people that get away with a lot more stuff.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
gonna push the bounds of that. Oh, I can do more now. I can do more. I can be more selfish and
Hmm.
take, 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 which is also the opposite of everything that you've said before with like the masculinity aspect, or just I'll put human aspect,
Yeah.
that people the more people are selfish, the worse the world would be. I think if people were more uh if they sacrificed more, we'd be in a happier world.
And it's sacrificing for the benefit of others. And it's not taking away other people's burdens. They'll have their own burdens, but it's also trying to teach them that no, there are burdens that they can bear that they would then save someone else of even greater difficulty. And it's if that's the mentality, that's what will lead to a much better not only relationship between men and women, but a better society.
Yeah. Yeah. I miss I think it would have been so fun to live during maybe like the 60s or 50s, maybe 70s. A little more
It's hard to
classy.
Yeah, it's hard to pick, but like, yeah, you do see, like a perception of a more wholesome time in the 50s when,
Mhm.
um, yeah, yeah,
But I do like technology. Oh,
yeah, I do too.
back to feminism, or sorry, high power career. Another big thing that I think has impacted women to want to have a higher power career, interconnectivity. now that we know about so many issues, like women for some reason don't like the general rule. We like the exceptions. Things like
Mhm.
love. We always love that beautiful love story. It's the same thing. We now know a lot about these women who've been married and then at like 50 or 60 the husband leaves them with nothing. So you always end up planning for plan B because women are planners, right?
Mhm.
So we have that also kind of in the back of our mind, and that's something that I even had in the back of my mind. Oh my gosh, just make sure you can always take care of yourself. If that were to happen, say like Mark, of course, left me, you would find a way. You would find a way. You don't have to plan for plan B. I don't think that, we have like that
Yeah.
exception of like however many 5 to 10%, if it even
Yeah.
is that high, you have to think about.
Yeah, and people like to skew the numbers just in divorce in general. Like one of the things that impacts the perception of a higher rate of divorce is secondary divorces. When someone gets one divorce, they are statistically
More
far,
likely.
far, far higher to get multiple divorces down the track. The rates for divorce in first marriages is actually much, much lower than when you look at that just by itself.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that, it's not a possibility. What needs to happen is people need to learn that this is the most important decision of their life, and so they shouldn't take it, carelessly or flippantly. You need to approach it intentionally, and if you approach it intentionally, paying attention to red flags and all those things, you can mitigate so many of the potential risks.
Mhm.
And that's what we need to teach people. The negative result that's coming out of this kind of black pill nihilism is people checking out of having a relationship at all, and that's the worst outcome possible.
It's sad.
Yeah.
It's sad. And I see it a lot in just even in YouTube, because it's weird how this like red pill relationship space really bleeds over to entertainment a lot. And
Mhm.
as I've, done more research into the red pill, and then you see it in entertainment, because every story is somehow involves a little bit of love or relationship or friendship, doesn't matter.
Mhm.
And now it's almost one and the same. So I I would like to see entertainment go back to, just something fun, something wholesome about family relationships that is not just women good, men bad.
Yeah. My gosh, yes. Like, and it shouldn't be hard. Like, appro once upon a time, the things that I'm saying was just common knowledge and common sense. Um, but now the world perception has shifted so much that what I think is like these were things that I was raised with, and they were basic truths that when I share them, people respond like, "I wish my parents told me this growing up." And I'm just like,
Oh my god.
"Oh dear," you know.
Well, the weird
It's
thing is, who knows? The parents might have been sharing it, but
maybe it just didn't
you
sink in.
yeah. And I mean, my parents, they taught us a lot of lessons, and it did hit later in life what those lessons were, because maybe I was too distracted with uh bad dating, or I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll call it acute happiness, when you don't think about the long term and you just, it's like eating, oh, do I want to eat the candy or do I eat the vegetable because that'll make me feel happier later?
Yes, exactly. The delayed gratification is something that has gone out of people's understanding. Though it's all about instant gratification and just pleasuring and selfishness and doing what makes you feel good in the moment, and that leads to such destructive things. And it's such a contrast because like my outlook for dating, everything like that. Yeah, it was all delayed gratification. I'd never even kissed a girl until I met my wife, but oh my gosh, the blessings and benefits I'm receiving
Hmm.
because of those early life choices are tremendous. And I don't credit them for myself. I credit them to the people that taught me these things. And I'm just overwhelmed with a sense of gratitude that I had those lessons, and now I'm trying to share some of that to other people,
Yeah.
to pass it on. Yeah.
And I think those two specific videos that I watched on Night's Watch, which you guys should watch, I'll put in the description later. I hope people have heard, listened, and maybe hopefully put that into their lives, because sometimes you just need the right person to tell you all the things you've probably been told.
And honestly, if those videos even just helps one person out, it's all worthwhile. I mean, the one person finding happiness and success in their life is of such tremendous significance that
Mm-hmm.
if anyone can do any action that could benefit someone else in that way, oh my gosh, that what a one that's an achievement that is greater than so many things in life, I
Yeah.
feel.
And I mean, like, having two people, if they meet and have kids, that's going to be more than two people happier in
Yeah.
life. It's going to be kids and, grandkids, hopefully one day, if you impart the right lessons.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I only wish I listened to my parents. They did tell me the probably the lessons that I ignored. um, so do you think that we as a society can move away from this, uh, you know, selfish gratification to your, like, as you call it, the delayed gratification, from the casual dating scene to intentional dating? Or do you think we're kind of stuck in this loop?
Oh, gee, like society can change drastically even over short periods of time, and we're really seeing that. And so it really depends on what happens in the almost collective zeitgeist of the culture. Uh, I'm not sure. Some people are waking up, not enough people. All like, so I don't know. I honestly don't know. I hope things can get better. Um, again, I don't know what would require it. It might take a generational change. Like,
Mhm.
a lot of people, unfortunately, are going to realize the the things that they were taught and pushed towards leads to unhappiness, and usually they won't have children as a result anyway. And so
Mhm.
like the people that do have children and investing in the future, hopefully will then teach their children the correct things,
Mhm.
and it'll change, and we can try and save as many people along the way as we can.
Because this is my thought, that with Gen Z and millennials, we saw it at the beginning with the millennials, a bit of the selfishness. And then Gen Z is like the absolute epitome of like selfishness, at least that we see online. Okay. I know there's gems out there. So I'm thinking the generation after Gen Z could actually be the one to change it all. And we'll see that come up after. But that's just my hope. I have no idea 100%, because it usually swings really, as Gary says, the pendulum swings back eventually. So
Yeah, yeah. Future is going to be interesting. That I can absolutely
absolutely. I
say.
mean, I even see people like, I say this, but I am trying not to use technology as much anymore. You know, what was it? The TikTok about going on silent walks or something, which
Yeah.
was funny because the girl was on a silent walk with her phone. So how does one do that? I don't know. But I don't bring my phone when I go on my walks if I don't need to. I
Yeah.
prefer that. If it's during the day, I will, just because in case a work emergency comes up. But yeah, it's so much nicer without it, as much as you can. I'm even like meditating to a small proportion, as much as I can per day, just to be like, okay, what do I feel? How do I feel? Let's check in with myself, because we spend so much time working for, our jobs, other people and whatnot, and we don't do as many things for ourselves. And this is the type of selfishness that actually could benefit your other work, if
Yeah.
you are happier, knowing, okay, my body needs this today, let's do that, and then I'll be better for the next day.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think it's selfishness per se, because I mean, the mentality usually is that of course you need some of your like some time to give to yourself, usually, so that strengthens you to be able to keep helping, sacrificing, bearing the burden for other people. But yeah, like it absolutely appropriate kind of
Mhm.
attention to your own mental health is absolutely important. And so yeah, I because selfishness, when used, is always considered as a negative thing, and that type of attention is absolutely appropriate and needed.
Mhm. And like even just let's put it in the perspective of healthy eating versus unhealthy eating. We don't give ourselves enough attention to do those things that will make us better. And again, delayed gratification, I suppose, for the future, health wise, vitamins, minerals, all that. So I try to meditate or exercise in order to make sure I'm healthier so I can do this job longer. Because
Mhm.
this job, if I only just sat, would be really bad for my
Yeah,
back, for
yeah,
example.
yeah.
I know you keep active. I love watching your like when you swing your swords. It's very fun.
I try, but oh my gosh, like yeah, the whole because most of my work is just in a chair though, and that has bad results.
Mhm.
Um, yeah,
Mhm. I feel the same, which is why I got a
yes,
standing desk.
yeah.
I don't know how people do it, to be honest. Sometimes when they actually legitimately have a career where it's like 9 to 5 and you're at the desk for, 4 hours lunch and then 4 hours. Don't know
Mm,
how they do it.
yeah.
I at least have a choice to reorganize my day if I want to. But yeah, do you have any plans on other videos for the young men and women
Yeah.
out there? Okay,
I've
good.
already recorded like 3 or 4, I think, that I need to edit and get out.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm actually so excited. I love listening to your recommendations and little things that end up resonating with me. Like another one here that I really 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 liked. People should not give away their affection and love so flippantly and save it for someone who deserves it. Like definitely resonated with me.
Yes, because it can come from a number of, I guess, negative perspectives where there are lonely, like guys can be lonely, girls can be lonely, and so when they meet someone that's just willing to give them even a little bit of attention, they'll ignore some really big red flags and even accept bad treatment
Mhm,
for that connection. And it's like you're worth more than that. Your attention is worth more than that.
mhm,
And sometimes like guys and girls are willing to accept certain red flags and even poor treatment because of how attracted they are. They're just so hot and everything. It's like, no,
mhm,
stop prioritizing that. Okay. In actual fact, when you find someone who treats you well that you really connect with, right, they become the most beautiful creature in the world. um, and they need to understand that. And so of course you should be attracted to them, but sometimes maybe like even if you see like 2 girls, like you think one is more pretty, right? If the other one is a nicer, better person, let's go for, like, you should be attracted most of all to
mhm.
who they are as a person, and that should be the most, yeah, significant thing.
Yeah, yeah. And the full package, because I mean, looks will fade. People do get shorter over time.
Yes. Yes.
And the wallet is not always there, at least on a female perspective. They
Mm,
might have bad times, they might have great times. You just never know. It's about the mentality that's behind that. I think that is way more important. And that's something that I think a lot of women don't realize until uh, well, you have a glass breaking moment, whatever that
mhm.
is.
Yeah, yeah. And so, like, I kind of realized that probably after, in hindsight, with some of the girls that I tried to pursue. Like I remember,
Mhm.
so again, these young single adult activities, they have these larger conventions, really, really great. And
Uh-huh.
there were some girls that I really tried to pursue that I thought were really cute. And I just wasn't getting much reciprocation or attention. And I think I was right to resent that after the fact because, hang on, I know my own value. I know what I'm offering is something that the person who I'm going to marry is going to, I'm going to be able to offer something really special because you are special as an individual. And if you are trying to approach people that don't see that, well, then they don't deserve you. And you
Yeah.
should feel satisfied in
Mhm.
swiping away. The next,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
done. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that a lot of people don't have the courage, confidence,
Mhm,
realization in yourself to be able to do that. I One thing I really hate hearing from, and I hear it more from women than men, uh, but when they've been with someone so long, and especially getting to like the late 20s and 30s, I've been with him for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. Like, why would I leave him now? If it's not working for you, the relationship, then you should leave, not um stay with him just because you've given that much time to him. Because they ignore red flags. They'll, you know,
mhm, mhm.
maybe the guy doesn't want to get married and she wants to get married, but she's just staying there for the hope of being married because she spent so much time with
Oh,
him. It's really
yeah,
sad when you hear those types of
yeah.
stories. So it really sucks. And yes, John Z here says you have to be taught how to have self-esteem. No one teaches it anymore.
Yeah, and and the world is just beating people down, and the type of attacks that young men are getting. That's said multiple times. It breaks my heart, and it's
Mhm.
destroying guys' self-esteem and their internal value because they're constantly being told that they're inherently misogynistic and they're inherently
Mhm.
violent, they're inherently rapists. It's just like, do you do you see the damage you're causing by that bull crap? I
Yeah.
can't stand
Yeah.
it.
Well, and it's racism and sexism being so blatantly out there, and I I like the idea of individuality and basing your decisions on that person, not a group of people. Like, this guy was born what, like 16 years ago, and he gets shaped into this role just because of how he's, the color and his gender, and he hasn't even started dating yet, and yet he's an evil man. Like, that makes
Ah,
no sense.
exactly, and so there are so many guys that struggle with self-esteem and confidence. Like that's a big issue. Because a lot of guys they're afraid of even approaching women. And look, Me Too has done a lot of damage because they're afraid of being accused of certain things. Like, because there are
Mhm.
women who claim like even just approaching someone, like being hit
Like
on
assault?
it, as assault. It's like what? In what
Well
reality is that?
it's a very interesting thing to see, especially on TikTok and, Twitter, but the girls wanna be approached, but they don't wanna be approached, and then they wanna be taken care of, but they also wanna be independent. We can't make a decision here, okay?
Exactly. They're fighting with natural instincts versus the propaganda that they're being taught and fed. And
I
like,
know.
because
Like, the idea, even I saw a TikTok, a couple days ago, where the girl wanted, like, on a first date, spend about $200 on a meal. I'm like, "But you're kind of a bit of a feminist. Shouldn't it be 50-50?" Like, it makes no sense to me. But she's like,
yeah.
"Oh, I bought makeup and face cream and my dress, and does he leave with the makeup and the face cream after the date?" No.
Oh yeah. I mean, the the entitlement of the modern day is just
It's
there's a
really
lot of
sad.
challenges. Yeah.
It's really sad. So I hope that the somehow one of the generations these days are gonna wake up, set better standards for themselves, and hopefully teach the youth. And I see there's still gems out there. I've talked to quite a few guys about just the way they grew up into the next generation, that they put the lessons they've learned to their kids, and then you'll hopefully see that into the next generation as well. So if we can, as a group, do that, I have higher hopes.
Yeah, I mean, and look, for me, the focus is trying to raise my kids with these values and understanding and give them the highest chances of happiness and success in life. Because that's the thing that I have most control over, you know. And I'll still try and send messages out online and things, but the place where I can have the greatest impact is in my
Mhm.
family.
Absolutely. People will only listen to advice if they want to seek it out.
Hmm.
And I did love reading your comment section in those videos you made. It's actually like really beautiful. Like, oh God, if I were to go some of this. Um, Thank you, Shad. This is a wonderful message. One of the best people on YouTube and the internet. Keep doing what you do. You are sowing the seeds that will make this world better. I love this comment. This is a very happy comment section.
It is.
compared to some
I,
others that I've seen. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. When it comes to those pop culture videos, I feel like it's it's like majority good, but there's probably some in there that are very interesting. We'll say
yeah,
interesting.
it's been uplifting that the response to those videos has been so
Mhm.
positive. Yet at the same time, I mean, it's a little discouraging that there's so few people trying to promote those messages. And there are some people that, get the ear of young men, and they have half, helpful things to say. And then the other half, it's just
Yeah.
really detrimental.
Well,
Yeah.
right now we're like I loved the red pill space when I first came in. There was a lot of great points that they had, be better, exercise more, be the best you can be type of advice. But then there's a lot of stuff that comes with the manosphere aspect that I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, some really bad, philosophy and ideas that,
Yeah.
will
And
not help out young guys.
logic is not salacious enough to be on the algorithm on YouTube. So it's nice to see some good videos out there. And yeah. Yeah. So I can't wait to see more of yours.
Thanks.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate it.
We have Paul Blunt for 279 Canadian says, "Who's your shaddy?" It's like back to Conan days already.
Yes.
It was funny. I was talking to Mark and he's like, I was like, it's time for Daddycast, except with Shad, I'm going to call it Dad because I feel weird calling it Daddycast. Oh, but yeah. You have great advice, so I love it. I love it.
I
Uh,
appreciate
Andrew Matthews for £5 says Mark was dual wielding one halves of a motorbike in Devil May Cry. Is this realistic?
it. Depends how strong you are, but generally motorbikes don't make good weapons.
Half of a motorbike? How do you do that? I'm so
Oh,
confused.
probably got smashed in half, and then they can pick up the
Yeah.
debris and hit people with.
I've never played Devil May Cry. Maybe that's why I have to play this to understand this reference. Maybe you should do that. At some point, you should actually go smash a half of bike and see if it's a good weapon. I don't think you can pick it up. It seems pretty heavy. Bikes, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, we have fun exploring many strange and wonderful things. So who knows?
One
Have
day.
to
Yeah, the non-engine part probably. Oh, Mark's saying it's called the Cavalier. Cavalier. I have no
two
idea.
halves of one bike, he says.
Okay. I'm still confused if you can't tell, Mark. Oh my God. This is a good question. What if you make a motorbike nunchucks?
Why would you ruin a motorbike to make nunchucks? You had a perfectly good motorbike.
Oh my God. Hokies try to start a fire. At least it's not the binge versus weekly model
I
from last
love that
week.
it only takes like the slightest comment to set them all off.
Oh my god. And what's funny was the first time they had that argument. Sorry, we're really off the rails. I got heat stroke, that FNT. So like halfway through, I couldn't even be on camera. I was like
Oh,
off, and I was like by the toilet with my laptop working. So I was like, I'm feeling sick all of a sudden.
oh
I'm
no.
having like PTSD to that. So, hello, Epic Mike. All right.
Hey, Epic Rock.
Love it, Big Mike. Okay, so let me just check Streamlabs, make sure we're all good on that aspect, and we are. So, Shad, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a great conversation, and I definitely have learned a couple good pieces of advice, mostly with the baby wipes one. I'm gonna keep that for the future.
Like genuinely, it has worked, and you need to be consistent with it. Like once they learn that, there's been many times when they're reaching for something that you don't want them to touch. You're like, no, and then you can't let them get away and and so it's a consistent
Mhm.
thing. But once you teach them that, it's worked with each one of my kids.
So I'm gonna definitely use that. Andrew Matthews for £5 says, "Extra girl, ask Shad the Cheesecake Factory question." Did you see the video about the date with the Cheesecake Factory,
No,
Shad,
I have
by any
not.
chance? Thank you again, Andrew. So this guy takes this girl on a first date to the Cheesecake Factory. Have you been to one of those? Just
Yeah. Okay. I think we have. I don't know if our versions are different, but if we have a cheesecake shop that might be the Cheesecake Factory, and it's just like it's like a bakery but for cheesecakes.
Oh, okay. So they have that aspect, but they also have like good food, like pastas, sandwiches,
Oh, okay.
appetizers. So like a restaurant and a cheesecake. I don't think they
Mhm.
make any cheesecakes on site, to be honest, at those places, but
Okay, I'm
they're
thinking
really
of the
good.
mhm, yeah.
Um, okay. So you kind of ish know about it. Uh, it's a chain restaurant, but I'd say it's a little higher than the regular, like Olive Garden
Mhm.
version. You know what Olive Garden is?
Yes, yes, I do.
Okay, so it's a little bit. I think it's a little better than Olive Garden. Okay, so now that we have like a gauge, do you think it's a good place to go for a first date?
First date. I mean, I think it would be fine. You know, I don't think girls should, and guys, by the way, should have too high a standards. If someone's willing to take you out and spend time with you, as long as I mean, especially if they're paying for the food and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So in the video, the girl gets very upset that she's taken to the Cheesecake Factory because she thinks that he should have taken her to a nicer place.
Entitlement, red flag. Like
Hmm.
that's just such a. You should be grateful for her revealing
And
her
yes.
attitude like that because that lets you know. All right, have a nice life. Leave.
Mhm,
Be
mhm,
gone.
and eventually he gets to that point, and the worst part is she was, like, live streaming it, the
Oh.
interaction, so she sits in her car, and she won't get out of the car, and then he comes back into the car to have this conversation, and she still has the phone on, she's not even looking at him, so, I mean, those 2 things alone just tells me that sh no.
Yeah,
No.
entitled and streaming it as well. Narcissist. Gosh.
Narcissist, yep, and
Yeah.
what's funny was that he actually was gonna take her to a nicer place, but because she was an hour late, they didn't make the reservation. So she did it to herself. And then he took her home because he's like, "Nope, I'm
Yep,
not dealing with this."
exactly right.
So, that's the type of, like, interaction I hope men do and women, if you see something up, yeah, sure, maybe one you might let one slide if it's not something that's a big thing, you know? Maybe they're late 15
What would be
minutes
not
to
a
have
big oh, yeah, being late, I mean, that's fine,
yeah, but if you're late an hour without the communication, I might be a little upset
yeah.
about that.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I usually tell people, "No, do the coffee date." It's no, For me, I like an hour at most. If I don't like it, then I can go. If I like it, it can be extended.
Mhm. My first date I took my wife on, we had a picnic in the Botanic Gardens in Melbourne, and we went to see a movie.
Oh,
And
what did you see?
so there were not many options. In fact, there was only one option that I thought I would be interested in seeing, and it wasn't a good movie either. It
Oh.
was the it was the live action Dragon Ball Z film.
Oh no!
Yes, oh,
Oh no! I don't even know that there was one out. Oh my goodness.
that was years ago, yeah. And it
Oh,
was really, really bad.
was it? Did like America make that, or was that?
Yeah, it's an American-made
Oh,
bastardization of the source
mm,
material. Yeah.
ouch, ouch. Yeah, that's all you needed to say, especially
Yeah,
live actions back then. Whew,
but
we
yeah,
definitely didn't understand that.
the quality of the movie wasn't really important. It's a catalyst to spend time with someone to talk and everything. And so the picnic in the gardens was much,
That's
much,
cute.
much better.
That's so
And
cute.
she also got to see how I handled certain things because I got accosted by a mentally disabled, somewhat homeless guy during the process. Um, so
They let
we
Mark out of the cage. I'm kidding.
so we caught the
Don't let
tram
anybody.
in Melbourne. There's trams in Melbourne, right?
Okay.
And because I was on low income, I had I forget what they call it, but they're basically kind of like a low income kind of pass card that gives you discounts on certain public
Okay.
services. And so I had one of those, and as I went to pay for our tram ticket, I said, "Ah, the privilege of the underprivileged," and I paid it. And there was this like homeless guy that thought I was talking to him, and so he came up and said, "I'm not underprivileged. I'm smarter than you." And my wife just thought, "Well, this is interesting. I wonder how I'll handle this." And she just sat back and watched with like this evil grin.
Because I mean, it sucks that that happened, but those types of moments, and that's exactly what I thought. Let's see how he handles this, because depending on how he does, will let me know if he's the type of person I'd want to date.
Yep, yep. And
Uh,
I handled as best I could. Just I wasn't talking about you. I was talking about myself. Um, but yeah, he seemed mentally disabled because it was like I was saying nothing, just noise. I would try to explain it to him, and then he would just respond back, "I'm not underprivileged." And I'm like, "All right,
he's stuck on that word.
yep, yep. This is not going anywhere. Okay, see you later. All the best. Have a
Oh
nice
my
day."
gosh. Uh, okay, so curious question. After the Dragon Ball Z movie, did you guys talk a bit afterwards
Oh, I mean, we
about the
talked
movie?
heaps. Oh, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure we talked heaps about the movie. I mean, I was very open about that. I was interested in all heaps of geeky, nerdy things,
Mm-hmm.
and my wife grew up with siblings who were very much into that, and she was vastly more so. Though she liked sci-fi, so Star Trek, and she would read heaps of literature, science fiction and fantasy. But of
Mm-hmm.
course, she adored, the Pride and Prejudice and Jane Austen kind of classic romances, most of all, and things. And I've made her more geeky throughout our relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I one of the first times I hung out with her was that morning shopping, and we were at the comic book store. We bought the luggage and lugged all
Yeah.
the comics back with us. And actually, we met you at the toy store, so
Yep. Yep.
that was so fun.
Oh, the whole
So
trip was great. Hanging out with you guys was such a
yeah,
delight. I loved it.
yeah, I'm glad we got to do it, because realistically, I was thinking it'd be years before I met you.
Yeah.
Mhm. So it was really
And
nice to be able to.
and it's just like we all just connected and like such good friends. And like I didn't exactly know what I was expecting, but I don't know. It was just like all you people, like you're genuinely great people, and
Mhm.
hanging out in person, like better than even I was expecting, and how great you all are, and how fun it was
Mhm.
to hang out. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And I'm grateful that we all had our, time together, because these these meetups, we don't get as much time with each other, that at least in that I've seen, because you do the meetups, we don't actually hang out at the meetup, and might have like a meal, but when it's in a big group, you're only talking to certain people. So like I didn't even hang out with Melissa until this meetup, really. Like we
Yeah.
hung out, but like we didn't really connect into deeper conversations. So
Mhm.
that was really nice
It was a
for me.
blast. I loved it, and I just feel so lucky and blessed to be able to, have such great
Mhm.
friends and hang out. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm very happy to hopefully one day go attack emus with you.
Oh, hell yeah. I'd love that. Yeah, if you guys came over here, I would roll out the welcome carpet completely, and
So excited. And I want to try, oh, what was it? The strawberry something. Lady Shad was talking about this thing that she liked to make with the kids. Oh my god. Some dessert.
there's a
She'll
lot of
love.
desserts she
I
likes.
know.
She has a sweet tooth.
By the way, when is that video coming out?
The
Food
Vegemite
and
one? Yeah,
yes.
yeah, I've just been so distracted by so many things. I just need to it's like, "Alright, get off, do it, finish it off, and it's there. I just need to do it."
Okay, one day, one day.
Yep, yep.
All right. So Shad, where can people find you?
Well, Night's Watch and Shadiversity are the main places, and, I'm being a bit more active on Twitter,
Yes,
arguing
you
about
have.
yeah, things that most people probably don't have any interest in, but there's that as well.
Yeah. If you want to see Shad fight about AI, I say fight, it's not really fighting. But his opinions on AI.
AI art specifically, and
AI art, yes.
I think I advocate for it so much because I see such potential and benefit for independent creators that I don't want them to feel shamed or silenced. Like genuinely, there is so much benefit and potential to yeah, like I said, independent creators to actually make more higher quality content to challenge the mainstream, and because I'm in that boat and I see other people in that boat and they're struggling to make content. Um, and this is such a help that, there's a lot of misunderstanding about. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm fighting for that. And
Yeah.
I genuinely like artists are in the best position to benefit from this. And I think so. Anyway, I won't get started. I'll get
No, no, I was about to say that it's with everything technological, we make these advances to make things easier. We could have said the same thing about even animation, drawing
Mhm.
versus digital animation.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
has to come.
there's a real I'll just quickly say there's like a really interesting comparison to rendering a 3D model. Like you spend the time, you make a 3D model, and then you render it to make it look like it is final state with all this great lighting and everything. That rendering process is all done by AI. I am essentially doing the equivalent thing to my hand drawn images. I draw it, I do all the work and everything, and then I use the AI to like add color shading, and sometimes I do the color, but then I enhance it with AI. And that process is basically equivalent to rendering 3D models and stuff into a scene. Yet people have a massive issue with what I'm doing, and they're saying I'm cheating and robbing myself of my artistic ability. I should just do it by hand. And I'm like, well, do you tell the 3D modelers to do all the lighting and rendering manually, but they're fine with that being an automatic process that the
Mhm.
AI achieves. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's a yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
mean, I like my art. I do paint by numbers. It's not real art, I know, but I'm gonna call it my art.
No, I think it's valid. I have a very open, more liberal view of art, and I'm almost at a point that art is anything that people consider is art. Like if they get
Well,
artistic value out of it, I can't take that away from them. I can't
mhm,
try and say that's not art if someone is legitimately getting an artistic response or see artistic value in it or artistic expression in what they're doing.
mhm,
It becomes a very individual,
yeah,
subjective thing. Yeah.
and a lot of art I don't get, especially modern art. But
Same,
hey,
same.
you do
There's a lot of
you.
people who get value out of it. I mean,
My favorite are like the weird like mud stuff ones, or when it's like splashes of paint on a canvas. And you're
Yeah.
like, that's thousands of dollars.
I know. I've literally seen someone drink paint and spew it onto canvas and sell them for thousands of dollars. Yep.
Oh my god, could this be a new thought meta? Okay. I'm not gonna put it out there.
And so look, like, people are entitled to not like AI art. That's
Yeah.
perfectly fine. And because yeah, like, but to say it's not art, I was like, well, you can't impose that on other people, you know.
No,
Just
no.
like I don't like modern art, okay. I don't, but I can't say it's not art, but I can think it's not good art at least.
Yes, yes. You can judge in that aspect for
Yes,
sure,
yeah.
for sure. But yeah, thank you very much, Shad, for being here. It's been a lovely conversation. Tomorrow we have Chrissy Mayer coming on at 9 p.m. Eastern. So please watch out for that link. And hopefully Tugs will be back. But if not, like I said, please send her a lot of love as her cat, Selena, has passed away. And we all love our fur babies. And she probably needs a lot of love right now. So yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.